feedback once we are able to finalize attendance throughout this whole week. So hopefully that addresses some of those frequently asked questions that you're thinking about already. But without further ado, I am going to get started. So give me one moment just to share my screen. Stephanie is our tech expert. I am not, but I am still going to be the one monitoring this PowerPoint, so hopefully we can make it work together. All right, so hopefully you can all see this presentation. This is going to be our Starting Your College Application presentation featuring Coalition for College. So the first thing that I want to talk to you all about is this idea of what application platforms you can use to apply to college. You are in a very lucky time of what we call consortium applications, meaning that when you begin an application and you choose one of these 6 platforms that we'll talk about momentarily, you are filling out your application information once and sending it to multiple colleges at the same time. When Stephanie or myself or many of our colleagues were applying to college, some of them were still on paper. Some of them you had to apply to individually. I was actually the first year of the Common Application as it was being this beta tested. So the idea that you get to fill out your application information once, your name, your email address, what high school you go to, is magical. And so I want you guys to really appreciate those pieces, to think about that there are all these universities that came together that want to help you ease and streamline the college admissions process. So the most used platforms are going to be the Common Application and the Coalition Application. We do have the Universal Application, as you can see up here. However, most universities are not taking the Universal Application at this time, but I like to throw it up there in case you see that terminology. You'll start to be able to connect the dots and recognize, okay, that's another consortium group of colleges that will accept the same application platform. However, it probably is not going to be the one that you utilize. The Common Application, the Coalition Application have the most number of colleges that will accept them. And what I always recommend is, as you're making your college list, to make a list of schools that you're interested in, and then find out how they are accepting applications. That is going to be the best way to choose which application platform works for you. After you're thinking about the most common ones, there are going to be some specific platforms as well that you can use, including QuestBridge, which is geared towards high-achieving, low-income students. And then if you are interested in applying to particular states, if you are from the state of Texas or the state of California, and you plan to apply to those local universities, there will be individual platforms that you can use. Stephanie already mentioned she's located in Houston, Texas. If she were going to apply to any of the colleges right around her, she would use that Apply Texas feature. Many of those Texas institutions, though, also use the Coalition platform. So if you plan to apply to some schools in your state and out of your state, using one of those application platforms on the first page is going to be most beneficial for you. So jumping into really the crutch of what we're talking about today, why the Coalition? How is this going to help me apply to college? I could do an hour-long session just on that, but I am going to give you my feedback as an admissions counselor on this side of the desk, as we call it. And let me be clear, the Coalition does not pay my salary, right? I work for the University of Chicago, and we accept the Common Application and the Coalition Application. But we are huge proponents of the Coalition for these reasons and more. With the Coalition, it is more than an application platform. You are not just using it as a function to fill out your information, send it to colleges, and be done with it, right? You certainly can use that, but the Coalition application is really a platform. It's something you can get started as early as 9th grade by starting to put in your demographic information. Again, your name, your high school, what your parents do, your email address, what kind of classes you're enrolled in, even some schoolwork that you're really proud of that you want to keep in one place, right? It has tools to help you ease that transition process, help you consolidate information. Instead of having different application platforms, plus a Google Drive, plus a spreadsheet with your college list. Everything can be in one place. And so it makes the process a lot less stressful because you can start early and ultimately have everything consolidated. Another big piece that I like to highlight with the coalition, and the last thing I'll say before I turn it over to Stephanie, is the fact that we have about 160 member colleges who accept the coalition platform. The reason that is 160 and not 4,000, right, for all of the colleges in the US, is because universities have to meet certain metrics in order to be accepted as a coalition school. Meaning that we all have to focus on supporting our students, whether that means academically, financially, socially, emotionally, the list goes on. We have all met certain metrics so that our universities are showcasing how we are supporting students through the entire application process, but also once you get onto our campus. A whole other session that you'll hear about later this week for Coalition Week is more about our application review process, what we call holistic review, understanding that you are more than just a test score or a GPA or any other numeric value that you want to send our way. You're so much more. And all of the schools that are on the coalition platform are telling you this by offering you to use the coalition platform, because we want to see you as an individual and how you as a unique entity are showcasing who you are to us, the colleges. So with that, I will turn it over to Stephanie to talk about the opportunity to start your own coalition application. And we'll continue to talk through that, again, opening up to some Q&A throughout our presentation. Thank you to those of you who are already using the Q&A box. I see that number increasing, which is awesome.
Okay, I'm actually going to have you go back one slide real quick for me, Rebecca, if that's all right. There we go. Because I want to, first of all, thank you. That's a lot of wonderful things to be said about our work as the Coalition for College, so I appreciate everything that Rebecca just shared with you guys. And I want to just highlight a couple of those points as well, because while we would certainly be delighted for you to use the coalition application to actually apply to schools, there's also a whole bunch of tools and things that can help you in your whole college admissions process as you think about where you might want to apply, and helping you along the steps for executing the different pieces that you need to do in order to apply, whether or not you're actually using our application feature. So just like Rebecca talked about the different consortium applications and whether and which one you should use, the coalition does pay my salary, but I'm going to tell you that for some of you, you may not only use the coalition application, you may also use Common App, or so really go through that process and decide which platform is going to help you, and again, or platforms, help you apply to the schools that you need to and cover the most ground. That said, as Rebecca mentioned, with MyCoalition, or our platform that's more than just the application, you can actually get started earlier. So even if you don't know where you want to apply, if you're a younger student who's trying to make that decision, you can still create a MyCoalition account to start the process and get some guidance along that college admissions path without actually, in the end, using that application. And that's totally fine. We're here to support you in this journey in whatever way that is that you need. For a lot of you, that might be the actual application, but for some of you, it might not. But the very first step for all of that is creating your MyCoalition account. So we're going to go ahead and progress to the next slide. So the very first step of creating an account is to select create a new account. So you'll first navigate to mycoalition.org. You can also come from our broader website to get to the platform by, there's a login button there as well, but you can directly navigate here by going to mycoalition.org. It takes you to this login screen, and then you'll see the create a new account button, and so you'll go ahead and click that. Next slide, please. And so this is the part where we're verifying that you're a real human. So just asking for a few details, your email address, which will become your username. It does need to be a real, active, live email address, as that's part of the verification process. You'll create your password like anything else, and give a few identifying pieces of information. Again, just to verify that you're real, not a spam bot of some kind. And then you click Create Account. And we're going through these steps today. I realize that it may be difficult on a singular device to be walking along and doing this with me. But during the Q&A portion, you might have the opportunity to switch over to just listening and be trying this. And if you need any assistance in rehashing these steps at that point, that's fine. You can chat in those questions. But there's also a feature within MyCoalition. It's not circled on this screen here, but in the upper right-hand corner of our little screenshot, you'll see the word help. And this isn't the live environment, but if you click that, you would see a tutorial option that would take you through many of the same steps that we're going through today, so that if you need a refresher, this is a lot to digest all at once, that is available to you at any time once you've created your account. So after you hit that Create Account button, there's a little email verification process that isn't quite pictured here, that you'll get an email with a link that you will follow to verify again that your email address is a real email address and you got it. And so that we can be sure that any communications related to your application you're actually going to receive. If you put an invalid email address in there, we have no way of verifying that, and this can be kind of important information when you get to the application submission process. So let's go back one more, please. Thank you. So the very first section that you'll see when you start working on your profile. So the profile is kind of the bulk of the MyCoalition piece that you can start, working a little bit at a time, and it's actually progress towards your application. So all of this information that you can complete in the profile, each of the different sections, it will all feed directly into your applications at the time that you start them. So what that means is even if you're in 9th grade right now, you can actually essentially start your college application right now by working a little bit at a time to work on that profile, whether that's, a few minutes that you have on the bus when we're back in a situation where you might be riding a bus, or, waiting for your turn to pick the TV show while we're currently in the state of quarantine and those sorts of things. But any free moment, and this whole platform is mobile friendly. So once you've created your account, you'll be able to do this on your phone, and just, anytime you have a few minutes to kill, you can knock out a few more pieces of your profile. And before you know it, that progress bar will be full, and you'll be at the time that your profile is 100% complete, on average, you're already 75% of the way done with your entire college application. So the personal information that you see here, just the general information. One thing to point out is if you don't have a legal middle name, that's totally fine. You'll just check that you don't have one there in that little checkbox. We can move on to the next screen now, Rebecca. Perfect. Okay, and so then you'll go on, and there's a few pieces of information here, and I'm highlighting these for you because these are the things that are going to help the system, help MyCoalition know you a little bit better, to be showing things to you that make sense based on where you're at in the process, where you might select, yes, I'm in high school, or no, I'm not currently enrolled in school. I believe for most of you students, that would be yes, high school, or beyond potentially, and answering the question of, have you graduated from high school? For a lot of you, that would be no. These kinds of things help MyCoalition know whether you're likely to be a first-year applicant or a transfer applicant, and guide you towards completing requirements that will be fitting for the type of applicant you would be, so that you don't spend time doing things that you don't need to do for for schools that you want to apply to. We can move on to the next screen. So demographic information, just want to point out that this whole section above the languages is all optional. So you can choose to report information here or not. It's entirely up to you. And if you have any questions, you'll notice throughout the whole platform, there are these little blue question marks. We see a lot of them here that can give you a little bit more information about a particular term, like, what do we mean? When My Coalition is talking about, are you Hispanic or Latino? What all does that encompass? If you click the little blue question mark, it'll pop up and provide you more information. And those tooltips are available all throughout My Coalition. So anytime you see a blue question mark, it might give you the information that you need if there's a question that doesn't quite make sense to you. You can go ahead and move forward. And so there you go. You can see when you click, now we know exactly what's being referred to with this particular question. All right, we can move on. All right, and contact information. This is another important field. As you are entering phone numbers and things like this, this is information that has the opportunity. You can opt in. We might have the chance to talk about it a little bit later. You can opt in to share this information with colleges and universities so that you can start getting potentially text messages if that's something you're interested in by entering a mobile phone number. Or start receiving hard copy mail by including those addresses below. Keep going. And financial aid. This is a later section, so you'll notice that we're not seeing it listed on it's further down on the left-hand side of the screen, but it's a very important section. So the financial aid section, this is relating to your fee waiver, your coalition fee waiver. And so by answering yes to any of these questions, then you are demonstrating that you qualify for the coalition fee waiver, and you will not be asked to pay an application fee to any of the participating schools. Right now, all of our coalition members participate in our coalition fee waiver. So for any of those schools, if this information is true for you, then you will not have to submit an application fee. Rebecca, did you have something you wanted to add during this slide?
Yes, I did. If I could figure out how to unmute myself. Thank you. So one thing that I just want to highlight for you all, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we progress through this program, but Coalition makes it really easy for you to apply for fee waivers, right? All you have to do is basically answer these yes/no questions, and then it gives you the opportunity to have a fee waiver at, again, any of those 160 plus member colleges. However, for any university that is not on the coalition and you want to request a fee waiver, there are different processes for that. But the way that I always advise students to sort of take that information and go is that it doesn't hurt to ask, right? A lot of that information will be on the university's website. Some will make you show different financial information to prove that you need a financial aid waiver for that application fee. Some universities will just say, you know what, if you're going to apply for financial aid, we won't charge you that fee. Don't worry about it. And there are going to be a lot of different responses to that. But my advice is always to say, ask. It doesn't hurt. The worst possible scenario is someone says, no, we can't give you a fee waiver. So that is the piece that, again, Coalition makes really easy to streamline. But for those universities that you're interested in that may not be on this platform, that's the best way to sort of go about a lot of the tools that are already existing for you here. So one other thing that I want to just add in quickly is you can create what basically we see on your side through the coalition. So it gives you the opportunity to have that full transparency through the application process, right? And we'll show you a slide also later that gives you an example of you can create the PDF that is literally sent to me, right? You get to see the exact same thing that we're seeing on the admissions side. So you can know what kind of content that you've provided is being shared with an admissions counselor. And again, that goes into that conversation from before about you being so much more than just one piece to all of these schools. But for the fact that you can have that full transparency to be able to show, okay, here are the financial aid pieces that the university is seeing. Here are my extracurriculars and activities. Here are my essays. And this is how it looks and is presented on the other side is super helpful. The other thing that I will say is, and Stephanie can talk far more about this, but when you answer these questions and become eligible for the fee waivers for the universities, we just see on our side yes or no for the application fee, right? And that's specific to UChicago, but I will say that that privacy piece is really important. And so for you to be able to fill this out and just be able to say yes or no and not have to put in any concrete data unless specifically requested is also really helpful to streamline that process. Again, the idea of this whole presentation, the coalition and its existence, many of us who work in education, our goal is to make this more seamless for you and to make the college application process more accessible. So whatever we can do to be helpful and help you understand the process, that is really what we're here for. So as the financial aid piece wraps up, and you'll see that chronologically in your account, you'll also see that there is the opportunity to select what we call the locker and some additional media components within that. So I'm going to start talking about the locker a little bit and then pass it over to Stephanie to talk about the full capabilities. But what I think is so cool about the locker is a little bit what I was addressing before about the collaboration space. Again, as early as 9th grade, you can create this coalition account and you can start saving documents in there. You can upload essays that you've written for school, multimedia projects. If you are a musician, you want to upload some musical MP3 files that you have, you can do that. If you are a blogger and you want to upload YouTube videos, you can do that. This space is basically used as a more functional Google Drive. And you can hold a lot of different pieces in there so that you can come back to them. I don't know about you all in your organizational styles, but I remember having a folder that I was like, okay, maybe I'll use this for college. Maybe I'll use this for college. And I just kept throwing things in there. And then eventually I'd save things as different files and could never find them, right? This allows everything to be in one place. So even if you put something in 9th grade and then 11th grade, you go back and you're like, actually, that wasn't as cool as I thought it was, you can pull it out. But if you're like, that was actually really cool, I'm glad I still have access to it, there it is. So when you go into that upper right-hand corner of your account, you can see that locker dropdown. And then when you click media, you can upload those files. This is a screenshot again of what I was describing before, how students can see what we see. This is literally what it looks like when I get a coalition application from a student. And then you have access to all of the other pieces and can see the full profile of what gets sent our way. And then you can see if you need to make any addendums to them and reach out to universities accordingly. I am going to bounce it back over to Stephanie to talk a little bit more about those locker capabilities and some of the other drop-down features at the top.
Okay, so the locker is this really great tool that is a free private storage space for you. And an important part of that is that the private piece of it. While you can choose to take some of those items if there's something that makes sense to be attached to a college application, nobody is seeing them without you actively making that attachment and attaching it to a particular application. So this can be a space that if you are starting, in 9th grade or 10th grade or even later on, you can be, as Rebecca said, cataloging different things of your interests, your activities, whatever you've got going on, some schoolwork you're proud of, a hobby, any of those things that you can capture as a video, as an audio file, as a Word document or anything like that. And you can upload it and save it here in the locker so that you do, when it's that time to sit down and actually start your college application and you're asking yourself the question, well, what am I going to write that essay about? Or, are there programs that I'm interested in? Those sorts of questions. You'll have all of these pieces of yourself to look back on and kind of understand your story, your narrative, because that's really what colleges and universities want to know about you. It is, not just you're not a collection of data points to them. You are a person. And so as you're thinking about the things you want to include in your college admissions, it's important to reflect on that high school experience and the story of you, and figure out a way to represent that story in your college application. Using some of those data points, but also using some of these things like an essay, or for institutions that do collect, a video file or an audio file or those kinds of options, then you've got those pieces that represent who you are as a person authentically, rather than just, a collection of test scores and, grades and those sorts of things, which are important too. but definitely gives you the opportunity to kind of craft that story. So we've talked a lot about, where do you want to go to school and how do you figure that out? And so that's what we have this colleges list section for. So you can see on the screen right now, we've got where you would locate that colleges tool. And so you'll click on that and move on to the next screen. And you'll be here on the college list. And when you start your college list, it may not have anything on it. You may be asked to select a few right at the beginning when you start or not. And so you can search for any school in that search bar. Now you'll notice on the right-hand side, you'll see a little drop-down that just says coalition colleges. So the default setting is that it's just going to show you the coalition schools because honestly, most students, that's part of why you're here. However, you can use this system to actually keep track of all of the schools that you're interested in, whether or not they're coalition schools. When you click that drop down, it pops up and it gives you the opportunity to select all 2- and 4-year institutions, and you can see the whole list so you can keep track of the entirety, not just those that you're going to, you could potentially apply to using MyCoalition. So, but you'll notice when you click show list, like we saw on the previous screen, you'll go back one more. Thank you. So it starts by that being folded up, and so you're not seeing anything unless you start typing. But if you click show list, now we can move to the next screen. Then you'll see all of the different schools that are listed there, and you can click add to list, and then you'll start to see schools that you've added populating in this list below. And so we can see that our test student here is interested in Binghamton University, SUNY, and Harvard University. And I'm sure Chicago's on there too. It's just, not alphabetically first. So an important thing that I do want to point out here is this little checkbox. It says, I want to start sharing my contact information with, and then it would list the specific school. They may use the phone number and my contact information to text message me. That little checkbox down there allows you to share your data. Not all of it, some of it, little segment with the colleges so that they can start communicating with you and you can learn more about them. This is especially useful for those younger students who don't know. I have no idea where I want to go to school. Let me learn more about these places. That's how you can start receiving emails and mailings and those kinds of things, and also be made aware of opportunities when they might have a representative in your area or things like that. So while you don't have to share your data with schools, if you're in a place where you're kind of need more information to decide where you might want to apply, then I would recommend checking that box so that you can start communicating with those schools. The other cool thing about the college list is that you can share it with people who support you. So in the upper right-hand corner, we see our big red arrow right now. It says share list. And this is true too, that little icon that's got the 3 dots that we're seeing connected, that's our little share logo. So anywhere in the platform that you're seeing that little icon, you can actually share that with a supporter, whether that's a mentor or a counselor who wants to see what schools you're interested in, or even a parent. You can connect with those people and share this information with them so that they can you can have discussions and collaboration as you're working through the college admissions process. A lot of counselors like you to share that information with them. So we just want to make sure we highlight that. You can move on to the next screen. The other piece, and so actually let's go back just for a second, just so that I can point out where to navigate. The other thing that we offer, so I mentioned early on that if you don't use Coalition to apply, that's okay. We want to help you in your process anyway. We're not just about the application. And so one of the tools that we offer is in the upper right-hand corner where you see the word help. When you click that, you get the opportunity to click on MyCoalition Counselor. And so MyCoalition Counselor is, and I think it's even prettier than this now. We need to update the screenshot for everybody. But is a resource that has a ton of articles that are to help you along the way through your college admissions process. Again, regardless of whether you're actually using Coalition, MyCoalition to apply. Obviously, there's more relevant details for how to use things like the locker, but if you don't, that's okay. We have this information here. So we have the value of your fee waiver, deciding where to apply, how to build a college list. This can help you with all sorts of little details along the way. We even have a whole section of things that are coming straight from member colleges and universities like U Chicago, that they've created some little videos or some special articles about, I believe one of the most popular ones is out of the University of Tampa, and it's entitled How to Write or Not Write a College Essay. And it just provides some, helpful and, done in an amusing way, tips on the kinds of things that you should think about including in your college essay. And so there's just all sorts of little nuggets of knowledge that you can get here in my coalition. And so this is intended to be sort of a supplement to any other supportive folks that you've got in your life, or, to step in and take that place if you don't have a lot of people that might be able to help you along the way. So yes, this is my coalition counselor. And as a side note, all of these articles are publicly available. So if you have a friend who has not created their MyCoalition account, you can actually share the link to one of these articles with them. They don't have to go create a MyCoalition account in order to access this. These resources are all free. So if you've got a friend or a sibling or somebody who wants to, all of it's free, but it's publicly available. They don't even have to create an account. Then you can share those things with them without, they don't have to go through any extra steps or anything like that. All right, next slide.
Awesome. So that actually is a perfect transition into our wrap up. So MyCoalition Counselor is one of the incredible resources that are available to students online. We strongly recommend that you use reputable sources when you are looking for help in the college admissions process. MyCoalition Counselor is a great place that aggregates and combines a lot of different articles written by universities, written by staff members, written by professionals in the field. But we also recommend using your resources as a whole. And so please add myself and Stephanie to your list of resources. The best contact information for our organizations is up on the screen, and I'll leave this here for a few minutes as we start to address the Q&A. But a lot of you are also able to use high school teachers, administrators, counselors. Those are going to be the best places for you all to start because they are going to know you in the context of your high school, what the preferred technical systems are, and all of the nitty-gritty that are going to be really helpful for you to start this college admissions process or continue it if you're already involved. But like me, every university is going to have different regional representatives who are your biggest advocates for admission at the individual colleges. At the University of Chicago, I represent the state of Texas. If anyone from Texas is on this line, look at this face. We'll be talking soon. And I'll talk more about some UChicago details that have been coming in through the Q&A. But, my colleagues on the call are representing all different parts of the country. We have colleagues who are representing different parts of the world. And every single university that you are going to come across is going to have someone who works the admissions office who is there to support you, to answer your questions, and to be a resource. So MyCoalition Counselor is an incredible place to get started for general information. And as you start to cultivate that college list, we really encourage you to use the individual university resources that are available to you as well. So I'm going to leave this up for a minute and just address the first sort of three big thematic questions that we've seen. The first of which is, at the University of Chicago, since we accept both the coalition and the common application, do we have a preference? I think that it is very clear we believe in the coalition and the mission of the coalition and all of the incredible tools that they have. But when it actually comes to that application, we do not have a preference. Please feel free to use whichever one you feel more comfortable with. As I mentioned before, which one might adhere to more of the schools on your college list. And also if your school has a preference. We know some some high schools feel very strongly about using the coalition. Others feel strongly about using Common App. Again, if you're in the state of Texas, your school might say most people use Apply Texas. By all means, you should use that one. But you also can use multiple. So if you are applying to some of those schools in Texas, for instance, and I promise this will be my last Texas comparison, it's just a really easy one. If you are applying to schools via Apply Texas or the University of California application systems, but then you also want to apply to the University of Chicago or any other school, you can certainly fill out the common application or the coalition application and another one, or even the coalition and the common application. It's entirely up to you. Again, we just want you to sort of streamline the process in the best way for you. One of the other questions that we were starting to see a lot.
Can I chime in there before we move on, Rebecca? I do just want to say, though, that you only need to do one application per school that you're applying to. So while the University of Chicago does accept both the common application and the coalition application, please don't make yourself go through the process of doing both for the same school. You're just making more work for yourself because really the way all of that works on the back side is it all gets collapsed together anyway. So there's certainly no like advantage to going through that extra work. You're not getting an extra essay in or anything like that. So it's really better to focus your energy on doing one application per school really well rather than trying to, I don't know, apply multiple times to the same place using different platforms. So, do that, comparison of these are the schools I'm interested in. These are the applications that they accept. If you've got some that are in the coalition that aren't in Common App or some that are in Common App that aren't in coalition, you may end up having to use both platforms, but decide which one you're going to use for each school. Don't trouble yourself with double dipping because that's just a lot of extra work, honestly, and it doesn't help you.
That's a great point. And actually, you cannot submit both a coalition and a common application to UChicago. If you were to do both, one would overwrite the other one. We can only accept one application. So very good point. But actually leads me perfectly into our next sort of major question, and I'm going to bounce to you for this, Stephanie, is, what would you say are sort of the big differences between the common and the coalition application besides maybe that list of schools who accept, even though there is some overlap?
Well, we offer the MyCoalition, we've talked about a few of those things in particular already, but I can definitely highlight them as distinctions. I think a really big one is that fee waiver component that like part of the understanding with our schools is that, they're accepting that fee waiver. And so it really is just that simple, yes, no checkbox answer rather than, any sort of like additional like verification process and all of the additional steps to make that happen. So that is one piece. The other is, of course, the locker as a place to be your free storage to kind of craft that and, collect the pieces that will help you craft that narrative of yourself for your admission. Additionally, our requirements for our colleges, they have to meet criteria around the pillars of access, affordability, and success in order to be able to even be members of the coalition. So we can confidently say that any of our members who are accepting an application through us are a smart college choice. So if you're still searching and trying to figure out where you want to go to school, MyCoalition is a great place to look because you can actually, these schools have already been kind of vetted by us for you. Whereas, doing that same search in Common App, like there may be more schools there, and there are certainly a lot of great schools that are not yet in the coalition, but you might have to do a little more legwork on your own to determine whether those schools are committed to the kinds of things, the kinds of supports and things that you need around those pillars of access, affordability, and success. So, and our coalition members, I'm going to be giving you a dated statistic, so I apologize, but we're something like, I want to say almost 20 percentage points on average, a higher graduation rate for students. So it's not just that these schools are committed to being accessible in this admissions process and being, affordable in this admissions process, but they're actually partnering with you as a student to ensure that you get through college, not just to college, and graduate with your degree. So that is, those are some, it's kind of the quality of school that because they're in the coalition is an advantage. Other pieces, of course, is the MyCoalition Counselor. But again, it's not really about picking one over the other. I think anybody can benefit from having a MyCoalition account and using those tools. And if at the end of the day, you don't apply to a single coalition school, so there's no reason for you to use the application, that's okay. We just want to know that we helped you. So, that is the piece. Obviously, it benefits you if you apply to a coalition school because the work you do in your profile then feeds into that application. It's that much less you have to do. But really, that's what we're here for, is to help you through this process. And, we work really hard to make our application as user-friendly as possible and are always seeking feedback and trying to do things to make it better and easier and more streamlined. Those are the efforts that we make to try to make it a good experience for you. So I hope that helps. But mostly we just want you to get in there and benefit from the tools that we're throwing out there for free.
Awesome. And to sort of bounce off of that a little bit, but circling back to capabilities of the coalition, we actually seem to have a lot of international students on the call, which is amazing because it's probably the middle of the night for you all. So thank you for joining, or for many of whom are on the call and have indicated it's 1 a.m. But a lot of the questions are pertaining to, do all of the features, including fee waivers and access to sort of all of the MyCoalition pieces apply to international students as well as domestic students?
So first, yes, all of the tools and those things, those are all accessible. MyCoalition Counselor is, still accessible in public and free, and all of those features. The fee waiver component is a little bit different because many of those criteria are things surrounding like U.S. guidelines, like the free and reduced lunch program. So you just have to kind of read through those things carefully. But so the fee waiver, you may not find as many of those criteria applicable to you. So that part's a little trickier, but that's where you can absolutely reach out to your individual institution, because as Rebecca said earlier, the worst thing they can say is no. So I would certainly encourage you to kind of, if you're not seeing a value that is a fit for you within our existing fee waiver criteria, to reach out to those individual institutions and see what happens.
Great. And for to sort of bounce off of that, and for international students who are asking, what does the application process look like for us? Every university is going to be slightly different, but in general, it's very similar to the requirements for a domestic applicant. The major difference is just going to be what potentially language requirements are going to be if you have to submit an IELTS or a TOEFL score. Additionally, there may be some differences in the context that we need from your high school to best understand the kind of curriculum that you are learning in, the kind of opportunities that are available, the types of courses that are offered, because as I said before, it's so much more than just a number that you're sending us. And so we really want to have a good understanding of what your learning experience has been like over the past 1, 2, 3, 4+ years. And so to give us as much context as possible. But I would say definitely recommend looking at individual university websites. We do a really good job at laying out what are the requirements and what are we looking at. And next would be reaching out to those regional admissions counselors who cover your part of the world. Those are going to be the best resources for answering those individual questions, because unfortunately, depending on the university, you'll get a different answer. So I don't want to give you, sort of blanket information that is unfortunately not going to apply. When you talk to a lot of different universities, the answer is often going to be, well, it depends on the university. And so just sort of putting that out there in general. Another question that I was seeing come up quite frequently was asking about sort of how to explain different pieces of your application that are usually in sort of drop-down menu form, right? Like, what classes are you taking, A, B, or C? You may want to explain that your high school does semester 1 different than semester 2 or something like that. Or maybe you got really sick during your sophomore year of high school and you weren't able to complete a class, but that's not representative of who you are as a student. So in both the Common Application and the Coalition application, there are places for you to explain any extenuating circumstances regarding your current situation. And for some students, that's going to be academic, some that might be personal, but really any additional information that you feel like you want to share with us that doesn't come through on another part of your application, I encourage you to use that space. And that can also apply to, I saw some questions trickling in of, what if my primary language isn't in that drop-down menu? I will be honest, I am very intrigued to know what your primary language is because that drop-down menu has hundreds, but there are certainly ones that we could be missing. So feel free to, again, use that space that I just mentioned as a place to write, this is my primary language, or I know that I wrote my family is at this primary address, but I spend equal time with 2 members of my family. You can also contact me here. Again, we're human beings on the other side. I know sometimes it feels like you're just throwing information into a computer, but we do want to help you as much as possible. And you can always reach out to individual universities to fill in some of those gaps. Stephanie, I don't know if you have anything else to add there.
Just on particular things like not seeing a value represented in a list that is, applicable to you, like a language and those kinds of things. We are always looking for that kind of feedback because if it's true for you, it's probably true for other students. And if we can get that information and get it added in and make that enhancement to our system, then we want to do that. So to report those sorts of things to us, you can either file, once you're in MyCoalition, you can actually go up to help and seek out support and file a ticket in that way, and that will get the wheels turning on getting that item added to our development process. Or alternatively, you can also email info@coalitionforcollege.org, which was the email address that you saw earlier. That is another way to provide feedback to us. And then at the conclusion of, if you're a senior this year, you will receive a survey this summer. And that's another opportunity to kind of let us know, what was your experience like? If there were really things that we need, if there were things that we need to make better, we want to make them better. Obviously, if you're already a senior, it might be a little late for you for your first year applications, but it can help us improve for the students after you. So we welcome feedback, and the more detailed you can be, the more helpful. That allows us to understand what it is about it that needs to be adjusted. So yeah, there's the email address there, info@coalitionforcollege.org.
Just putting this up again I'll leave this up for another minute. Oh, I always get nervous that I'm going to click the wrong thing or switch slides when I'm not supposed to. So I figured it's always safer to keep it down, but I'll put this up for another minute. One of the other questions that we were seeing a lot, which is a great question, is when can students start a coalition application? And when can they create a coalition account, recognizing that those are 2 different things. Mm-hmm. So reiterating that to students.
Yes. So you can create a coalition account at any time, 9th grade, once you're in 9th grade through really the rest of your life. You can start today and get started. And work on answering, filling out that profile a little bit at a time so that, it's not the night before some major deadline and you're trying to rush through it all, because I don't know that I've ever heard anybody on the other side of the admissions process when they're all done say, gosh, I wish I'd waited longer. So you can certainly start that MyCoalition account, today and get going. As far as actually starting the application, that piece for a specific school like UChicago, that piece is in control of the schools. So they actually, on the development side, it's publishing the application and making it live for the upcoming term. That's controlled in the hands of the school. So when they, go live or publish that application, is really in their hands. We see a lot that they can start for the upcoming cycle in July 1. But there's a lot of schools that don't do it at that point, so don't hop in there and expect to see them all live right then. But you'll see a lot more begin to go live in August. But they kind of, filter in a little bit, but if you have a specific question about a particular school, the recommendation is to reach out to them and say, hey, I'd like to get started. I finished my profile. When are you going to make your application available? And they'll usually have kind of a ballpark answer for you.
And I'll just jump in and say it is our favorite answer in higher education, exactly as Stephanie said, as it depends. Some universities actually, as soon as they close for current seniors, they will start opening up on a rolling basis for current juniors.
Yes.
There are actually a handful of universities that, we are not one of them, but there are a handful of universities that are technically already open for you to start completing your application.
Yes.
I would say the most common dates are going to be, as Stephanie mentioned, July 1st and August 1st, where you'll start to see those individual university applications open, which also will have then specific information about essays and other requirements that you have to complete for those universities. I see a handful of questions coming in about, what are essay requirements? How do we complete those? In general, all universities who are accepting either the Common Application, Coalition Application, the QuestBridge application, etc., will ask you to provide a personal statement or personal essay that is telling us a little bit about you. Those questions are already available. So you can start looking at those. Even if they're from previous years, they tend to be very similar from year to year, if not duplicated entirely. And so you can start getting a sense of what the questions for your personal essay or personal statement might look like. As far as individual universities, for some universities, that might be the only thing you have to complete as far as essay questions go. Others are going to ask you to complete one or more short answer questions, one or more long answer questions or extended essays. Specifically at U Chicago, we have 2 required additional essays, one of which is more or less, why do you want to go to the University of Chicago? And that's going to be a pretty common one that you'll see throughout many institutions, right? Why do you want to go to X institution? But our supplemental essay that is referred to as our uncommon essay or our extended essay, which tend to have the more abstract and thought-provoking questions, those are going to be available in the summer. We don't have an exact release date because we are still choosing those questions, but as soon as we have selected them, we let students know. We send a big blast email, and that is actually going to be available even prior to our application being open. So we try to give you as much lead time on the essay prompts so that you can be working on those even before hitting that submit button. The other thing I'll note about that is just because a university has an application open on August 1st doesn't mean you have to submit it on August 1st or August 2nd. There are some universities that are going to prioritize reading applications in order that they receive them. Those are traditionally universities that have rolling admission, and you'll see that phrase. But other universities like the University of Chicago, if you apply August 1st or October 31st for our November 1st deadline, we are still only going to start reviewing those applications on November 2nd. So make sure that you're also being thoughtful about your timelines and the pieces that you are critically, the pieces that you have the most control over in order to make this process as easy as possible. For those of you who are spreadsheet people, I recommend putting name of university, application deadline, and what kind of admissions plan to apply through. If you are a sticky note person or a calendar person, whatever it might be, just make sure that you're correlating application date and university name, and that will be the most helpful for you to complete these applications. Okay, I'm just looking through questions here. Okay, it looks like we have a question on the personal statements of common application versus coalition application prompts. The prompts that are developed for the personal statement or personal essays, and Stephanie, feel free to jump in if I don't cover everything, they are developed individually by those consortium applications. So the coalition application questions are going to be different than the common application questions. However, they're often similarly themed. So if right now you're a sophomore or a junior and you're just starting to think about generally, how do I tackle this? using any of the prompts that you see is probably going to be very helpful for just kickstarting that thought process for you. But they ultimately are going to be different. Stephanie, I'll let you chime in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just also add to that for the coalition essay, for our schools that choose to accept the coalition essay, there's also always going to be a submit an essay on a topic of your choice option. So in the event that you have a very specific prompt that you have created an essay for another purpose, you can certainly, as long as it makes sense as a college essay, you can certainly use that essay and just make sure you do that topic of your choice selection when you're indicating your prompt. But the coalition essay prompts are available both on our website as well as within the actual MyCoalition platform. When you go to the coalition essay section, you can see which prompts those are and indicate which one you have responded to, and then put the information there. Rebecca, would it be all right if I shared my screen for a second? I just want to address, there was a question, a kind of nuanced question about a couple of fields in the contact information section that I just wanted to, so absolutely, I can successfully do it as well as Rebecca here.
Probably better.
All right, so is everybody seeing, contact information and all the profile sections over there on the left? Okay, so the question was about, and we've gotten this a lot, so this is why I wanted to make sure, and we will be making changes to this to make it a little clearer in the upcoming cycle, but the question about underneath mailing address, you're seeing a start and an end date. Do note those are optional fields also, but can be sometimes confusion on what those are. That information is for students who may be at a temporary address, either for part of the year in one place versus another, or maybe moving soon, or those kinds of things. So these start and end dates are helpful for institutions as they are trying to mail you stuff. So that's what those are there for, is if you know that you'll be moving from somewhere and need to remove and receive your mail somewhere different, then you'd want to make sure you go ahead and include that end date so that they stop sending mail to this address at that point and can reach out to you to get an updated address. So, if that's true for you at the time of your application submission. However, if you're not moving, you haven't moved, you're there, you can just leave those fields blank. They're optional. You don't need to complete them. And I did just want to go ahead and show you the coalition essay is, a profile section here. And when you click it, you can see these prompts, and they will be staying the same for the upcoming cycle, and this is where you can see that submit an essay on a topic of your choice. So there you go.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
There have been a few questions about transcripts and different course selection and things like that. So I just want to address one piece of it, and then I'm going to bounce it to Stephanie for the other part. But as far as how to report your GPA, class rank, different components of your transcript, including the different classes that you're taking. Try and do it as close as you can to what your transcript is saying. Because ultimately, this is going to be one piece that we see, but we also are going to get either your official or unofficial transcript from your high school, which gives us a breakdown of a lot of contextual pieces, but not just what you see when you see your transcript. Not just, again, GPA or class rank or what classes you're taking. We also get a lot of other information, what we call the secondary school report and the school profile. And that gives us additional context to the kind of school that you're coming from. How many students attend that high school? What kind of classes are being offered at that high school? How many teacher to student, the teacher to student ratio? Is it an urban, rural, or suburban kind of campus, right? All of these pieces play into who you are. And that gets into a whole other conversation about holistic review processes. That is not today's session, but the point is we want you to try to mirror it as much as you can from what your transcript says. But if there is not a, as Stephanie said before, like a drop-down menu option, or if it's a fill in the blank and you don't know the answer, you do your best. If your school says that they're out of 4.0 or 5.0 or 8.0 or 100 or smiley faces and rainbows or whatever your school is out of, try to put in that information accurately. If you don't know and your counselor doesn't know or a teacher doesn't know, you can always put in, you know, like a 0 or not accurate or not applicable or something like that. But really do your best to try to get the accurate information in there, because ultimately that helps us as we're reviewing the application. But as far as if things are not there that you're hoping in a drop-down menu, I'm going to bounce over to Stephanie and have you sort of fill in those gaps for students.
Absolutely. So of course, if you have questions about how to fill out the coursework section of the MyCoalition profile, then you can certainly reach out via the info@coalitionforcollege.org, or alternatively filing a help ticket, particularly if it's something a little bit more technical. When I click this button, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, or I don't see an option that I feel like I should definitely be seeing here. Those kinds of things are especially great for the help desk. And so it's important to pay attention to based on the schools that you're interested in, how much of that coursework you need to complete. We do break it into 2 sections for the high school pieces, the 9th through 11th grade versus 12th grade coursework, because institutions, some of them are only interested in self-reported data for one or the other of those. And so, as Rebecca said, a lot of schools are going to get a transcript from you that may come later. And so they're using this information often as to get a sense of, your educational narrative and what you've been doing in high school. And so it's important to try to capture that as clearly as possible. To include, we've done a lot of work to try to capture every scenario imaginable, but as you can imagine, there's a lot. If we don't get it perfect, then that's a great opportunity to reach out with a help ticket, or to the info@coalitionforcollege.org. I mean, we could take if we've got the time. I know we've got lots of questions to get to. So Rebecca, do you want us to take a look at that coursework section right now, or do we have kind of more pressing questions to get to?
I have one more thing that I wanted to add just for clarifying sake, and maybe as you start to pull that up and share your screen, I'll talk, and then we can take a few minutes to look at that. Okay. We do have about 250 more questions coming in, so I want to take some time, just a few. So it takes some time to address that, but a few of them were asking, I mentioned, if you're putting in your rank or your GPA. If your school does not rank, or you don't have GPA breakdown, or whatever your school uses as their own way of disseminating information to students on how they are progressing on their academic progressing on their progress. Yes. It's a long day, friends. We're making it work. So if that's the case, that's fine, right? And those are contextual pieces that we are going to know through those other pieces that I mentioned before. School profile, secondary school report. So if your school doesn't rank, don't put anything for rank. If your school doesn't give you a GPA, don't put in a GPA. That's okay. But again, that's a place to use that section I talked about before of if there's anything unique about your academic situation, feel free to include that in that fill in the blank section, right? Because that's helpful. Instead of us thinking, you just didn't put in a GPA or a rank or anything like that, we know, this school doesn't have that, and we don't expect to see those things. So again, remember that we are your advocates, and we are trying to do our best to articulate what your particular situation is. Again, it's going to be slightly different at every single college, but in general, that is sort of the best guidelines that I would suggest.
All right. So I'm just going to share, I've just pulled up the 12th grade coursework section, and I've gone to add a new course. And so this is where you can indicate, the subject area, like it was an English class. And then I'm going to choose which of the class course names is closest to the actual course name that, that would appear on my transcript. If none of these are close at all, because it's something totally different, then you can always select other and then provide that name that would appear on your actual, transcript. Because you students often have access to like an unofficial transcript that wouldn't fulfill the official transcript requirement, but you can pull that up in order to get the official name of your course to put here, so that when the school may be looking at your official transcript eventually, they can kind of match up and see that you're talking about the same thing. This is also the place where if you are taking a class that is giving you college credit, whether it is a dual credit situation, you're taking it at your high school but getting college credit, versus something like you're, attending a community college situation outside of your high school curriculum. Those situations are both captured here, and you would, indicate this, and you'd want to make sure that, whatever college you're getting that credit from, you had added it to the course, to the college information section, so that it would appear as an option here. We get a lot of questions about that dual credit stuff, so there you go. And so you can see, there are the types of classes. So this is where you would see things like AP or honors or any of those other things to indicate the type of class. If it's just a regular class, not applicable is the right selection there. We are actually changing that label. So if you're a junior now, by the time you're applying, by the time you're submitting an application, this will actually say like regular because we realize that's really how you guys generally refer to those classes. So it's just to be a little bit more helpful. And then this is where you can indicate information about, your grades. And as Rebecca mentioned, if your school doesn't provide grades, okay, just tell us that. And you can do that there. Additionally, we tried to capture all of the different kinds of schedules. This information does feed forward from your high school, so you don't have to select it every single time, because we're kind of operating off the assumption that, if it's semesters, it's probably semesters for everything. But some schools are special. Maybe yours is one of them, where you might have one class that was a trimester while everything else. And so you can select that specifically for this class, but it does auto-populate so that you don't have to select it for every class. And then similarly...
I've heard of a quinmester before.
Right? It's when there's 5.
Logically, that makes perfect sense, but wow. If you are at a high school that has quinmesters, please let me know. I really want to know what schools have that and find out more about your calendar.
I think it might be more those year-round schools potentially. I don't know. But in any case, they exist. So this is where you would indicate. So like, for example, we have semesters selected here. So if this was a, we said it was an English class, let's call it English 1 in 12th grade. And if this was a full year class, I'd just select both of those. However, if it was, some sort of compounded situation where I was only taking it for one semester or what have you, then I could indicate that appropriately via my check marks, whatever combination I need. And then additionally, reporting grades, believe it or not, high school transcripts are not consistent across the country. I can see Rebecca's surprised. So they report things in different ways. And so we provided you the opportunity to tell us how yours are reported. Did you just get one grade? That was it for the whole year, or as however many, whatever the length of that was, or did you get one grade per semester, or did you get one grade per semester, and then usually that final grade would be like the average of those things, or that kind of thing. Different schools handle those things differently, and so we're accommodating any of those. And there's if you've got more information here. And just kind of the note of, if it is a final grade, you don't need to like tell all the other stuff. You can just report the final grade. And then also you have the opportunity to indicate if you have like block scheduling and those kinds of special situations. And then another important piece of that was this. And again, this question in particular goes to kind of Rebecca's point about understanding your high school journey, and so that's why we ask about like regular or summer, so that as an admissions counselor is reviewing your file and trying to understand you as a human being, they're getting that story of the courses that you took and when you took them, and kind of understanding how that all lays out. So there you go. There's coursework.
And I'll just jump in. I know there have been a few questions that have then subsequently come in of saying like, well, I'm at this high school that offers this kind of class. What would it be categorized as? Right? Those are going to be specific based on your high school. And again, it's just going to slightly depend. And I hate giving that answer because I know you want something really concrete, but do your best, right? I know a lot of students who are taking IB classes or are in parochial schools that have religious affiliations might be taking some sort of theology or theory of knowledge course or something like that. Do your best to categorize that. If you think that most relates to a humanities or social sciences, you can put that in there. If you think that best relates to, there may be an other section, right? Do your best to figure out what you think is appropriate based on the other classes that you're taking, right? Are you already taking a math and a science and a social studies and an English and putting in other makes the most sense? Are you taking that theology class instead of a different social studies class? Do you want to categorize it as that, right? We're not nitpicky when we're reviewing applications in the sense of like, oh, well, this student put, theology in social studies, but really they should have put it in other. Trust me, we do not have time for that, right? We just want to know the kind of classes that you're taking. The categorization is more for you to have a good sense of really how your courses are looking, what your trends are going to look like. And it just gives you a good opportunity to sort of put brain to paper to see, okay, these are the things that we've done. These are the grades that I've gotten in the classes that I've taken. And this is a good representation of who I am as a student. So I would say focus more on the content and less on the nitty-gritty details of that categorization, but always reach out to Stephanie and her team if you feel like something is really wildly missing from those opportunities of the job content.
Yeah. Another piece that might help you figure it out is the high school graduation requirements for your state. That, I'm taking this course and it is counting up as, one of my required 4 social studies courses. Okay, well then I should probably select the, social science subject area for that particular class. So that's kind of where those categories for the different requirements across the states and in the way that we came up with those very much overlap and come from the same place. So if that's a piece that can kind of help you figure that out if it's stressing you out to think about where what subject a particular class should belong in. Is it's usually tied to what graduation requirement is it helping fulfill. And if it's not a particular one, if it's an elective, then that would be like that other category.
Stephanie, it looks like we're getting some questions about the functionality of the college list. And if students are able to add, we already talked about that they can be added to the college list even if they are not a coalition partner. But can you share materials with those colleges through the locker or through other components if they are not coalition partners?
Unfortunately, no. You would just be it's just a way to document that you're interested in those schools, particularly if you're sharing that college list with like a counselor or a parent or someone in your life who is helping support you through this process, that they can know that like, oh, this is another school that I'm interested in, that, you can see clearly that it's not a coalition school. We do not yet have partnerships with all of the schools in existence, so there would be no real way for us to transmit that information to them. So at this time, the only schools that you can really do anything with, if you will, other than add them to the list in MyCoalition are coalition members.
Great, thank you. We're seeing a bunch of questions about some gap year sort of options and what that might look like in the time of COVID. So I'm just going to take that question there. For all students, the answer is going to be, it depends on the university. I can only super confidently speak to things that we are doing at UChicago because that is where I work. See my t-shirt. But whenever you have these questions, it's always great to reach out to the university directly. I will say in general, universities get gap year requests every year, right? And when we talk about gap year, that's a student who is admitted this year, who's a current senior in high school, who wants to take a year between senior year of high school and freshman year of college. So we get many requests every year for students to take that gap year. Sometimes students have Army duty in their country. Sometimes students want to pursue religious events, want to do a Peace Corps program. Some students just want a break and want to, get a part-time job, help with a family business, travel around the world. Whatever it is, gap years are always an option for students. We are seeing pretty similar numbers this year at UChicago to previous years in requests. We are not seeing a huge change because of what's going on in with the global pandemic, but we are just one university of literally thousands. So I would say in general, if you're worried about that, I would ask the specific school if there's anything different that they're doing as far as admissions is concerned. I can tell you with confidence, the answer for us is no. We are doing the same thing that we have done year after year. Again, we've always approved a handful of gap year students and will continue to do so this year, but it will not affect students who are applying in future years. So in general, I hope that helps sort of assuage some of your concerns. But as far as the UChicago and admissions in the time of COVID is going, we have later this week some really specific details that we'll be talking about in terms of just how to prepare and how to think about the college admissions process, including using a lot of virtual resources, doing webinars like this, doing virtual tours of campus, etc. But in general, I will say, take a deep breath. We are doing everything we can to make this process as seamless as it can be. We know that some of you can't make it to campus. That's okay. We can't make it to you guys, right? I'm usually in Texas for 4 months out of the year, and I have been sitting in this chair for longer than I'd like to tell you all here in Chicago. So, we recognize that you are not able to do a lot of the activities that you were hoping to do or a lot of the summer programs that you were hoping to do. But also know that we know that, right? And we are trying to do our best to create different programs for you to do, but also understanding that over the summer, you might not be able to do the things that you planned to do or participate in the activities that you plan to during the academic year. So when you're thinking about those details in the college application process, remember that we're all going through this global pandemic together. We're in the same storm, but on different ships, but we are trying to help each other's ships as much as possible. So just keep that in mind as we're sort of going through this process. Okay. I just saw one more question that was for Stephanie, and now it keeps scrolling, so it disappeared.
I think I see it.
Okay.
The question about the locker and who can see what is up to the locker.
Thank you.
Just to emphasize again, that locker is private. It is just yours. No institution has the key. Anything you put in there, it can only be seen by anybody else if you specifically choose to do one of two things. Share it with an individual human, like a counselor that you want to review an essay or your resume or whatever extra piece an institution might require. If you specifically share that item, then your counselor can see that your like high school counselor can see that item, and you can actually have some collaboration. There's a collaboration space where you can chat back and forth about different things you could do to improve or adjust, or maybe they just want to tell you it's perfect. Those options are available. So that's one way that another human could see a particular item in your locker. The other way is if when you get to the uploads section for a particular college's application, you'll move through the different pieces. You'll answer all of their particular application questions, the little extra ones outside of the profile, and then you would see the uploads. If they ask you to upload something, like I know UChicago provides the opportunity to upload some stuff, then that is where I think, Rebecca can tell me if I'm wrong. That is where you could upload a particular item to that application. So if you have to take that step as a student to basically turn it over to that particular school and say, I want them to have a copy and be able to see this item. So other than that, it's entirely private and yours. So that's why it's a great space for accumulating all of those pieces of your high school experience to be able to kind of take a step back and reflect on, okay, what does all of this say about me? How can I tell this story in the rest of my application? And then you may or may not use any of those like actual pieces, but they're informing the way that you are approaching your admissions process.
And just to add on to that sort of secondary question, Stephanie, for you, of a lot of students are asking about recommendation letters, and I'm happy to address the content of that, but for the logistics of can students request and can they share the locker with counselors, things of that nature, could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So as you may recall from the slides, I'm going to see if I can pull up my screen again here to just show you. It helps if I hit the share button first. Here we go. All right. Okay, so once we are here in the platform, in MyCoalition, in the locker, we talked about the media pieces where that's your stuff. That's where you're keeping track of all of the artifacts of your high school experience. It's also where that generated PDF would show up so that you can see, you know, does it look the way I would expect it to look? Oh, is that not, you know, the type of answer they were looking for there? You know, that kind of thing to allow you to lay eyes on what your admissions counselor will actually be seeing. That's this piece right here. And again, but there's this other piece of the locker that is this official documents where you're managing your recommendations and transcripts and other things like that. You can actually start this process before you actually start any particular application because you know you're probably going to need a transcript. Like that's a pretty standard requirement. So you can come in here and actually request that. Granted, I already have, so you're seeing lots of fun things here. I think I've already capped out most of them. This is a test account I use a lot. But you can come in here. Well, here, why don't I just cancel it? Oh, wait, just kidding. You will not have to do this part. This canceling part is not. Yeah. Okay, fine. It doesn't want to let me cancel because of other things I have in progress. But nonetheless, I can actually come in here and request this from someone else. And so you would actually see a space here that allows you, it says like request transcript. And so you'd come in here and, you know, then okay. And again, because I have random things in progress, it's not going to allow me to do it. Apologies for a not great demo there. But in any case, you come in here to this official documents section. And the way all of this works is that you submit the request and then you can attach that request, whether it's fulfilled or not, to particular applications. So if I'm going to request a transcript and then I'm going to go start my UChicago application. When I move through that application and I get to the official documents section, I'll have the opportunity to attach this transcript request to the UChicago application. And it doesn't really matter whether my counselor has completed it or not. You as a student have done the part that you need to do, making the request and attaching it to the application, which then allows if your counselor hasn't already submitted that transcript, that it goes straight to UChicago at the time that they do if you've already submitted your application. If they submit before, if they submit the transcript before you submit your application, then it hangs out here in MyCoalition in kind of like a sealed envelope, if you will, to keep it official and will get attached at the time, will go with your application at the time that you submit. So yes, you can do it as part of completing the app, or you can do it before if you know that you're going to need those things, whether it's a transcript or recommendation letters, be it academic or general or high school. Sorry, I'll stop scrolling. I know that's a lot. So I hope that helps. So you do that in the official documents part of your locker, which functions a little differently because, you don't have access to read that recommendation letter. Back in the day of paper, it was literally the way that we actually mailed things in is like when I was applying to colleges, I literally got a paper envelope that was sealed that I then stuck in my larger envelope to mail it all in. essentially it's the electronic equivalent of that. You've asked your counselor, or I asked my counselor for it, and they submit it through MyCoalition, and it stays in that sealed envelope, so you can see that you got it, but you can't see or read what it is.
Awesome. And then to answer some of the content questions about letters of recommendation, it is never too early to ask your teachers for letters of recommendation, even if you are a sophomore or a junior. It's always better to come from someone later in high school so they know a little bit more about you in your recent years. I know I was a very different person at age 15 than I was at age 17 or 18. But you can always start having those conversations of, would you be willing to write a positive letter of recommendation? Every university is going to require something slightly different. Do you need 1 letter, 2 letters, 3 letters, maybe 0 letters? Do they have to be in particular subject areas, right? All of those are, all of those questions are going to be things for the individual universities. One of the other questions that I've been seeing a lot is about testing, especially since a lot of the testing was canceled for the spring in light of the global pandemic. Again, every university is going to have different requirements for this. UChicago has been test optional for several years now. So actually, as I mentioned before, nothing's changing with our admissions process. You can send testing if you feel like that is a good representation of who you are as an academic. But if you don't feel like your test scores or you weren't able to take testing represent who you are, that's fine. Don't submit them. We always and forever have been looking at your transcript, right? That is so much more important to us because that's a 4-year roadmap on the path that you've taken in your academic career. And we want to know who you are as an academic. Testing is one metric, but it is not the only metric. So whether you never took a test because it was canceled or you don't feel like it's a good representation, for UChicago, you don't have to send that testing. Other universities are moving to be test optional right now because of the global pandemic. Other universities are still requiring testing. So again, that's going to be on an individual basis. We're going to take 2 more questions and then we are going to wrap up for the day. One of which, Stephanie, is for you, is a little more, we do have some counselors on the webinar today, and some high school counselors want to know about the best way to sort of support their students, whether that's creating a dummy account or if there's a way that they can have administrator privileges, a little bit more for the counselors about their access for Coalition.
Absolutely. So you can certainly create a dummy account. You just have to have, a functional email address for it. A great way to do that, especially through Gmail, is if your email address is, john@gmail.com, then if you did john+1 or john+test at gmail.com, it actually creates like a little alias of your email address so that you can create multiple users, that all of the emails that the system might send to that particular address are still getting to you without you having to check an additional one. And that's just the best way to get the student experience, is to actually create a student account and kind of, experiment around and see what that feels like for them, kind of like you've been seeing me do today with my test account. You may have seen the administrative bar at the very top. That has to do with like my privileges as a Coalition staff member. It's the like super admin stuff, a little bit beyond getting more into the institution side of things. So that's not quite the access that you would see as a counselor. But so then conversely, to interact with your students in order to fulfill document requests and things like that, you would create what we call a student supporter account. And I would recommend that one be your like real email address without any of the extra plus sign stuff. But just because that way when students request things from you, they can line it up. It all matches up to the right account. And so, yeah, that would be the best way, is to create that test account, revisit it every now and then, maybe at the start of the cycle when we might have made some changes and enhancements, so that you're just, as familiar as we are with all the latest and greatest things that we've done to make the platform better for your students.
Awesome, thank you. And then I have one last question for you, Stephanie, and then I will wrap it up with some final sort of logistics notes.
But popular.
If you you were to give any piece of advice to the students on the call right now, it can be specifically about Coalition, but also just about tackling the application process, what piece of information would you leave them with?
Ooh, okay. Well, this is going to be about how you pick where to go. And so there's kind of two pieces of that. There's two layers and opportunities where you, the student, are having to make that choice. One of them being deciding where you want to apply, and then later on, after you've gotten admissions decisions, you might have another choice to make if you've been admitted to more than one school that you were interested in. And so what I would say is that I always advise students that, like, while the programs that they offer and the extracurriculars and all of those things, like, abstractly as data points are useful, I think finding your college fit is the most important part, more so than, like, I definitely want to be a mathematician and this is the best school in the country to go to for mathematicianing, for the major that would make me into a mathematician. I am not a mathematician, just to be clear. But like that is a great data point, but it's also to consider as you're thinking about it. But figuring out, are you coming from a big school and you really like having a lot of people around and a lot of people in your class and what that means about the different programs and things you can get involved in? Is that something that, you really enjoy? Or are you coming from a smaller school, a smaller community where you're used to a little bit more personalized attention or just that smaller sense, more intimate, and that's what makes you comfortable, like that kind, and that's just one piece, but like those kinds of details about reflecting on yourself to find an institution that's going to be the best fit for you, that's going to feel like home when you're there, because that college will get hard for you at some point, whether it's, for a lot of people, it's the first semester of their first year. Some folks, it comes in a little bit later as they start getting into, some of their major specific courses and things like that. It will get hard, but what's going to make you dig in and stay and fight through it is that feeling that you belong there, that this is home and this is where you want to be, and you'll work hard to stay there so that when it gets difficult, you feel that sense of community around you, whatever that means for you. It's different for different people, but so I think college fit is, for me, in my humble opinion, the most important thing in the college search, because that's going to be what makes the difference when it gets hard. If you're going to stay and complete and graduate, or, not have a successful experience.
Awesome. Thank you. And honestly, that prompted so many more wonderful questions about, how do I find my fit? Which is the perfect lead-in for me to talk about other exciting events that are coming up this week for Coalition Week. Tomorrow, we are having a session on financial aid. Again, that begins at 3:00 Central Time. We are located here in Chicago. The Thursday event is learning a little bit more about what opportunities are available in the Midwest, but that is talking a little bit more about college fit. This idea of that there are so many amazing universities, right? We've talked about the fact that there are thousands in the U.S., let alone all of the incredible global universities and colleges. But talking a little bit about how to differentiate between universities, big, small, medium, urban, rural, suburban, and everything in between. So Thursday might be that event for you. And then Friday is sort of our catch-all. Any additional questions? We know that we did not get to all of your questions today, and for that I am very sorry, but I actually have to say thank you because we got over 1,000 questions today in our roughly 90-minute session, which is pretty incredible. And so I encourage you all to join on Friday for that catch-all, which will also address a little bit more about college applications in the time of COVID. So Friday will be a wonderful event for anyone who is interested in joining. Again, that is at 3:00 Central Time. As a final logistics piece, just a reminder that this session was not recorded, but there are going to be many more sessions like this in the future. But thank you all so much for joining. We hope you have a wonderful night, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you think of anything at all. Otherwise, stay well, wash your hands, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me.